Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Sarah. I'm so excited
Oh,
to connect with you.
thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, I put together tons of questions for you because we share very similar philosophies, and there's so much that I want to get into with you. But before we jumped on, I was rechecking your Instagram again because I love the way you communicate about food to your audience. And one of the things that you have to talk about a lot are just answering people's food fears, whether it's peanut
Yeah.
butter or spinach or whatever the food of the moment is that they think they need to be eating more of or that they think they need to be avoiding, but it's always like a real food ingredient. I wanted to know, when do you think this started? That we pick apart different ingredients and think that we suddenly have to avoid it.
I think it's the natural progression of defining diets based on what you avoid or limit or like obsessively measure that goes back to the 70s with low fat diets and all of the fear
Yeah.
about saturated fat and cholesterol. And then you had the rise of low carb diets in the 90s. And then you had, right, the paleo diet become really popular in, 2010s. And I think you can almost map out this iteration of expanding on the list of foods that we're going to demonize, all for the search of not even like health goals, but waistline goals, right? They're
Yeah.
all marketed to us and sold to us based on achieving a generally underweight body type. And they're also diets that sacrifice health
Yeah.
for weight loss, in addition to that restrictive mindset, that moralization of foods, where you have a list of yes foods and a list of no foods, right? Good foods and bad foods. I'm a good person if I eat my good foods. I'm going to judge you as being a bad person because you eat those bad foods, or
Yeah.
I'm a bad person because I gave in and ate those bad foods. Now I've got this guilt blame cycle going. And I think that what's happened is we're at a moment now where this iteration, this diet says this is bad, and this diet says this is bad, and this diet says this is bad. We're at a moment now where every food, even water, is demonized by one diet or the other. If you tried to do all of the diets, if you tried to say, okay, well, if everybody's right, I will do all of these things, there would actually be nothing left to eat or drink. You couldn't even hydrate. And I think that shows just how faulty that logic is. There's a couple of things going on, right? So first of all, when you define a diet based on what you don't eat, it's not what you don't eat that makes your diet healthy or not healthy. It's what you actually eat and whether or not those foods are supplying the nutrients you need that actually matters. But when you say, okay, you're going to follow this diet to lose whatever weight for whatever reason, and here's all the things that you don't eat on this diet. All diets work for weight loss initially. That is the primary goal for most people going on a diet, is to lose weight. It's pretty easy to lose weight for a little while. It's pretty hard to lose all of the weight that you want to lose, especially because our goals are typically set as underweight, not actually healthy weight. And weight maintenance, sticking to those diets is really hard. So you cut out all the things. It works at first. You hit the wall. You hit the I can't stick to it anymore, or my metabolism has adapted to this, or this is just like the limits. This is how far this particular dietary structure can get me. And when we credited our initial success to that list of things that we cut out, the human nature, the very natural, like next thing that we're going to do is cut out the next group of things. Go to that next iteration of diet that demonizes even more foods. And so we're going to follow that path, cutting out more and more and more things until our diets are really limited. And one of those challenges is the psychology of restrictive dieting, which increases food fixation, obsession, emotional eating patterns, disordered eating patterns. It increases the risk of weight regain cycles. So it actually drives the yo-yo. The more we restrict, the more we eventually hit that point where we can't anymore and we fall off the proverbial diet wagon, and then we are doing whatever because we're disinhibited at that moment, and then we have to figure out how to get back on that restrictive diet pattern again. And we go through those cycles. The more weight regain cycles we go through, the less healthier we are on average. So you've got that psychology, right, driving the economy of weight loss diets, as well as driving our health into the ground with each one that we go on and increasing our likelihood of eating disorders. But the other whole flip side of this coin, which is what I'm trying to address with all of my content in Nutrivore, is the more foods you cut out, especially the more food groups you cut out, the less able you are to actually get the full range of nutrients that your body needs. So the more likely it is that you are not supplying all of your biological systems with the nutritional resources they need to be healthy, the deeper of a health hole that we are digging, because we're making it harder and harder, if not impossible, for ourselves to actually nourish our bodies appropriately. So that is, I find the psychology piece interesting, and I will talk about it, but I'm not a psychologist. That's not my area of expertise. The actual just raw nutrition, like how do you actually get the nutrients that your bodies need, and why is it important to leave restriction in the past and leave that moralization of food in the past in order to facilitate that goal of getting all the nutrients our bodies need? That's where I like, that's where my content is, right? That's the meat of it. But I think that it's, we just kind of, we got ourselves here by not understanding that that was the path that we were laying back in the 70s, by misinterpreting some studies, interpreting them before all of the data was in, and then acting on it and having like dietary guidelines reflect it, right? It was the classic, actually, nutritional sciences have been doing this for 250 years. Jumping to a conclusion, telling people they should do this thing because I assume this thing based on my preliminary data, and then we prove ourselves wrong 50 or 100 years later.
Yes.
And meanwhile, that diet myth is now firmly entrenched.
And we're supposed to be eating for energy. We're supposed to be eating for nutrient density, right? Because we're really eating to fuel our body and our mind. And that's what you focus on, is nutrient density. So how do we get back to identifying food that is nutrient dense, or just like creating a balanced plate to begin with?
Yeah, I think the like basis of that question is that if we talk about restrictive diets and also like diet misinformation going back to the 70s, we're talking about a situation where 3-4 generations of people have learned more misinformation about what a healthy diet looks like than actually good information. And we've kind of lost that ability to intuit what a balanced, nutrient dense plate even looks like. We've got so much fear and judgment around foods that we're not even sure what a healthy diet looks like. So in terms of identifying nutrient dense foods, that's why I developed the Nutrivore score, which is just a calculation. It measures total nutrients per calorie, which is the scientific definition of nutrient density. It can be a bit of a mind-bending way to think about foods because we're kind of used to reading a nutrition facts label, which shows us the nutrients per serving, not per calorie. So sometimes the nutrient density score of a food can feel a little counterintuitive because it doesn't match what we would have guessed based on that nutrition facts label. But it is a really important lens through which to view food, not the only lens. We also want to consider other important information, and that's where balanced plate comes in. I think most of us, we've been sold all the different macro manipulation diets where it's low carb, low fat, high protein, high fat, high carb, right? Like we've been sold all these different ways of manipulating macronutrients, that what a balanced diet actually looks like, most people are shocked. So for example, a balanced diet is 45 to 65% carbohydrates. That is the scientific definition of balanced macronutrients. That's the accepted macronutrient distribution range for carbohydrates. That's not what low carb teaches us at all, right? 20 to 30% calories from fat, 10 to 30% calories from protein. That's the range that we want to be in. And it's so counterintuitive. If you've ever been on a low carb diet or a low fat diet, it feels really wrong almost to have a balanced plate. But that's how part of the calculation for creating those ranges, which I didn't do, that was the scientists who specialize in that. That's their whole day job. They did that. They're actually considering this whole body of scientific evidence showing that balanced macronutrients maximally reduces risk of chronic health problems while making it easiest to get all of the nutrients our bodies need from the foods we eat, which is the Nutrivore philosophy. They don't call it Nutrivore, but I call it Nutrivore. We're basically talking about the same thing. That's built into that calculation. So out of that 45 to 65% of our calories from carbohydrates, so that's like half of our calories from carbohydrates is the definition of a balanced diet. Most people are just like, that's crazy. That is not what anybody has taught me before. That's scientifically, that's what the science is. But also up to 25% of our calories from total sugars. So up to 10% from added sugar. So that's like adding sugar to your coffee, maple syrup to your pancakes, or the added sugars in packaged foods, and up to 25% from total sugars, which includes added sugars and the sugars in fruit, the sugars in milk, for example, 25% calories from sugar. That means if you follow a 2,000 calorie per day diet, that's 500 of your calories from sugar. 200 of them come from added sugars, which is the equivalent of a quarter cup of sugar a day. And the other 300 can come from, it could come from like 7 apples, right? Like that just is a mind-bending like piece of trivia, because it's so misaligned with what most diet teaches us is how we should be eating. But it is literally the definition, the scientific definition of a balanced diet. And I think that is like, we need to relearn. We need to, I'm going to quote Yoda and just completely reveal the depth of my nerdiness right now, who said, you must unlearn what you have learned. Yes. And I think that's where we kind of all are. We've all been so steeped in diet culture, wellness influencer messaging, marketing, fear-based marketing, predatory marketing. We've all internalized those messages about our bodies and how we look. And we've all internalized that sense of our health is our personal responsibility, which is healthism, right? Like, it is a flawed, inaccurate message, but it's so ingrained now, especially, someone like me who used to be obese. I've gone through this ringer many times. It is so hard even now for me. I still have that like voice in the back of my head that is very judgy and also very wrong about a lot of things. And so to get to a place where we have a healthy diet, a health supportive diet that's also balanced, that also supplies us joy, because we are programmed to get joy from our diet. We celebrate with food, we nurture loved ones with food, we commiserate with food, we socialize with food. Like that is part of the human experience. We need to get joy from our diet. It doesn't matter how healthy the diet is. If we're not getting joy from it, we're not going to stick to it. To be able to adopt that, to be able to then have a healthy relationship with food and a healthy relationship with our bodies, and be able to get into that mindset of weight loss goals are not worth sacrificing my health for, and I'd rather be healthy than thin. Maybe I can have both. A lot of people can have both, but if I only get to have one, I'm going to choose health. All of that sort of mentality around diet and health priorities and lifestyle priorities, and understanding how little in reality our health is actually even in our control. Like diet plus lifestyle account for 40 to 50% of health outcomes, which means half or more of health outcomes are stuff we can't control. Yeah. Being able to wrap our heads around all of that information really requires looking at all of the BS that we have been fed since the 70s and being able to go, okay, blank slate time. Gonna throw all of this out, and then maybe some of it's right, but I'll learn it over again. And I'm just going to learn fresh. What is a nutrient-dense food? What is a balanced plate? What is a balanced diet? What are overall healthy eating patterns? And what are eating patterns that are going to support my health while still being something sustainable that I can stick to?
Can you walk me through what a balanced plate at dinner time looks like for you?
So I have a resource called the Nutrivore Meal Map. I'm just going to tell you what it is. So like, it's not a secret, but it's also one of the free guides that I give when people sign up for my weekly newsletter. And it's also in my book, which is called Nutrivore. So lots of places you can get the visual of it. But I make most of my meals look like this. Not all of them. There's absolutely some meals that don't follow this plan, and that is totally fine. But most meals look like dividing my plate into roughly equal quarters. No rulers or protractors allowed. Everything is estimates, because all of the science that we're basing this on is all like population averages. There's nothing precise about nutritional sciences. So roughly equal quarters. 1/4 I fill with a protein food. For me, I eat meat, so that's often meat or seafood, but I do have some meals that are plant-based, so it might be something like tofu or lentils or something like that. I have 1/4 of my plate that is a starchy food, often root vegetables, but also my lentils might fit there as well if I'm going to have, lentils with my chicken, for example. Or it could be sometimes a whole grain. I might make rice. I might make a pasta dish. And then the remaining half of my plate is filled with a variety of fruits and vegetables. I aim for 2 or more at every meal. And I have some meals where I'm like a way overachiever, right? I make a salad with 10 different ingredients, and that is my other half of my plate. And I have some meals where I only get one. And my half a plate is all just steamed broccoli. And I think it's really important to give ourselves permission to have days where we don't hit every goal, right? Where we keep it really simple, but we're still hitting those basics, which are lots of fruits and vegetables, lots of whole foods, getting protein, getting those slow burning, starchy carbohydrates. And then I cook and dress my foods with healthy fats. So I tend to use a lot of olive oil and avocado oil, but I've also reintroduced canola oil into my home after digging into the science on the benefits of canola oil, which was particularly mind-bending for me. And I will once again remind everyone about the blank slates that we're keeping, because I think canola oil has a very bad PR team compared to olive oil. So keeping that blank slate and being open to that new information. But then sometimes for flavor, right? Sometimes you just need butter, right? So, incorporating that diversity and that balance. So overall health promoting fats, but also a range of fats, because some meals you just want the flavor is really important. And so that's sort of most of my meals. So it's mostly, I embrace a lot of leftovers. So I tend to cook a big meal every 3-ish days. So we'll have leftovers for a couple of days. So it might be like a whole roast chicken with some vegetables around it as like a root vegetable, and then some steamed vegetables or a salad. Like that would be a go-to meal. I work from home, so I have the privilege of being able to put something in the oven that will take a long time to cook, but doesn't take a long time to prepare. So I do a lot of meals that are 5 to 10 minutes food prep tops, but maybe it takes an hour and a half in the oven. So I do a lot of meals. That's kind of like my go-to. So it's not a lot of time in the kitchen, but that's not a very easy thing to do if you get home at 6 or 7 o'clock at night. That is kind of my go-to, way of cooking, is very lazy.
Great food doesn't have to take a lot of time. And
Correct.
great meals don't have to have a ton of ingredients. What are your thoughts on sometimes, simple food being better for our digestive system? So, maybe making meals that have, less than 10 ingredients. Does that make a difference in how some people may feel?
So that's a really interesting question. I am not familiar with any science that has really looked at this question. That doesn't mean that science doesn't exist. It just means I'm not familiar with it. So I don't know if there is like a correct scientific answer to this question. But based on what I do know and sort of my intuition on this topic, so one of the things I do know is that our digestive processes and our various like hunger, satiety hormones, they're really like the ideal situation for them is a meal that includes protein, slow burning carbohydrates, fiber, and fat, right? So it really has like all 4 macros if we're going to separate carbohydrates and fiber. And that is where everything is sort of optimized for most people, right? Obviously, somebody with gallbladder disease is not going to be able to handle as much fat as somebody without. And then some people with kidney disease is not going to be able to have as much protein as somebody who doesn't have kidney disease. So there's lots of exceptions to every rule, right? And this is across the board in nutritional sciences. There's always people for whom this does not apply, and If you think that's the case, please talk to your doctor. But given that we're very well programmed for every meal to kind of have all of the macros, and also our gut bacteria are happiest when we're eating a wide variety of fiber types. So we have some gut bacteria that don't care. They will eat whatever food we feed them. And we have some bacteria that are really picky eaters, and they will only thrive in our gut microbiomes if we feed them their favorite foods. So we tend to get that diversity of fiber types by eating a variety of different whole plant foods. So we get that with a diverse diet. There's also a lot of science that just shows that high dietary diversity is really beneficial. So the more different foods we eat, basically the lower the likelihood of having a shortfall in a really important nutrient is basically why that eating pattern is beneficial. Plus the part where our gut bacteria like it when we eat a lot of different plant foods. So in an ideal situation, I think for most people, the more different things we can incorporate into a meal, the more likely we are to have all of our nutritional bases covered. Here's where I think the digestion question is really interesting, is if you have a food intolerance that you don't know what it is. So you haven't figured out what food or maybe handful of foods are causing gastrointestinal side effects or other types of symptoms, right? Fatigue, headache, rashes, maybe symptoms of an allergy. And so if you don't know what that food is, the more different foods you incorporate into a meal, the more likely it is that food is in that meal. So I think that is probably where that question becomes, right, that the simpler can be better. I think that's really talking about the situation of undiagnosed food sensitivities, or gut dysbiosis, where you've got some kind of imbalance in your gut bacteria. So you might accidentally feed them too much fermentable carbohydrates. So that's going to drive gastrointestinal symptoms. So I think where the simpler is better is really in a situation where my digestive system is often upset with me, irritable bowel syndrome, for example, and I haven't figured out what all the triggers are. And that's where simpler can really help just kind of, it can make it much easier to identify what the food triggers are. If you only eat 4 foods at each meal and then 1 meal a week cause the symptoms, you can go, okay, aha, it's one of those 4 foods. I've got it. But if I eat 15 foods at each meal and there's a lot of overlap and 7 of my meals this week caused those symptoms, I'm not going to have any idea what food it was. But I think in an ideal world where we're not talking about that type of situation, nutritionally, a more diverse overall diet doesn't have to mean each meal, but an overall more diverse diet is associated with better long-term health outcomes.
If people want to start looking and building a more nutrient-dense plate, when they go to the grocery store or when they're choosing their ingredients, what should they be looking for? Should they be looking at a chart, or should they just simply be looking at fresh ingredients?
So there are 3 eating patterns that are, I think, like the nutrient-dense eating patterns that are associated with, again, better long-term health outcomes. Diversity, we are kind of already talked about. The other one is like mainly whole foods, like 80-ish% of our calories coming from whole foods, which means 20% of our calories can come from whatever we want. That's maybe where we get the joy that helps us stick to the overall healthier eating patterns. And then the other like eating pattern that's really beneficial is more fruits and vegetables, which is why I say roughly half a plate covered in fruits and vegetables. That kind of helps to support that overall eating pattern. But that it doesn't have to be organic. There's no science shows there's no benefit to organic foods compared to conventional. It matters more what types of foods you're eating than what the quality of those foods are. So it doesn't have to be the farm fresh, the in-season, the organic, the expensive version. It can be like the store brand. It can be the frozen one. Like it can be the cheap one. So I would say look for whole foods, but that whole food could be canned green beans. It doesn't have to be the fresh green beans in the produce section. So look for the food that is still in a form that you recognize what the food is, or that you could have made at home from ingredients where you recognize what the food is, right? So like canned soup, the only concern with canned soup is they can be quite high sodium. So look for a lower sodium option if you eat a lot of canned soup. But that's going to have, let's say it's a chicken vegetable soup. You could have made that at home with all the same vegetables and broth and chicken, right? So like that is how we think about whole foods. It's a very loosey-goosey definition of what a whole food is.
Yeah.
It's basically saying a whole food has most of its inherent nutrients intact, right? That is, the processing it undergoes doesn't destroy a lot of nutrients. That's how we it's when in doubt, just call it whole. It's fine. It like, don't overthink it is kind of what I'm saying. So I would say look for mostly whole foods that are foods that you like, that are actually in your grocery store and that fit your budget. Don't be afraid to shop the freezer section. Frozen vegetables are just as nutrient dense as fresh, sometimes more so because they're frozen so quickly after being harvested. And some vegetables are a little bit more susceptible to nutrient degradation through storage than others. It's not a big effect. If you prefer fresh, go for fresh. Like whatever is what you prefer. The more important thing is that you're eating fruits and vegetables. So don't be afraid of frozen. Don't be afraid of canned. Think about the sodium with the canned, right? That's your little extra step when you're eating a lot of canned foods. And look at what are the things that you like. And I think it's really important when we are being intentional to make changes to our eating patterns, to adopt healthier habits when it comes to the foods that we're used to eating. I think it's really important that we are cognizant to make those foods in ways that we enjoy. I think it's really important to give ourselves permission to add salad dressing or the cheese cubes or the handful of nuts or the maybe it's even like some bacon bits. Like add the thing to our salad that makes us enjoy the salad. Add these seasonings or sauces to our vegetables so that we enjoy those vegetables, or roast them because we like them better roasted than boiled, right? I think it's really important to give ourselves permission to make those foods that are really important foods nutritionally, to make them in a way that's tasty to us, so that it's not just the 20% of calories that's anything that we want that's giving us joy. It's not just like, aha, my 20% of calories today was some chocolate chip cookies. It's not just that is the joy in my diet. It's everything I ate. Everything was tasty. I found a way to make everything that I ate today good to me. Obviously, the cookies were still the highlight because when are chocolate chip cookies not the highlight? But I still really enjoyed the roasted broccoli that I had, right? Like, I think it's really important to, even when we're being intentional to look for those more nutrient dense foods, to look for the ones that are like that we like and that fit our time restraints for how much time we have to prepare foods, that fit our budget, and that are foods that will ideally all of the foods we eat would give us joy. Maybe not all as supreme as the cookies, but ideally everything would be tasty. So I think those are like the things to think about in the grocery store. Are most of the foods in my cart whole? And is half of my cart fruits and vegetables, right? To kind of represent that half of the plate that would be fruits and vegetables. That I think those are kind of the thinking about it in terms of patterns and not in terms of diet, right? Think about it in terms of healthy habit and not a thing that I have to do for a certain amount of time and then I get to whatever is the food that I'm missing. Don't miss a food. It's okay if also one of the foods in your cart is your favorite frozen pizza, right? So like also being intentional to incorporate some foods that aren't whole foods, that are just there, again, to make sure we're getting enough joy from our diets, that it's something that we can stick to. I think that's a really important tool and one that diet culture in general tells us we're not allowed to use.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to create balance. Also, just so your body has more flexibility.
Yes.
Because if you get super rigid, if you happen to travel and you have to eat outside your comfort zone, your body and you mentally might really struggle to process some of those ingredients if you've been too rigid.
That stress response is legit. Like that is a real thing. And I come from the world of restrictive diets and food fear. That's why I can stand here on this side and have such a balanced like philosophy when it comes to food. Is that was a hard earned, like years long transition for me to both unlearn what I had learned and learn afresh the nutritional sciences, but then also work on facing my food fears and expanding my diet and realizing that I actually wasn't sensitive to almost all of the foods that I thought I was. And that was a really tough process to go through. But one that informs how I communicate about food in a way that I understand how you get there, because I got there too, right? Like I understand how bombarded we are with those messages, and that even as a scientist that I could believe what I recognize now as pseudoscience, but at the time I certainly didn't. I thought I was right. So I understand how we get to that place where we're really afraid of foods. And that stress response, when you are trying a food that you're not sure if it's now we're going to use air quotes and say good food. I don't know if this is a good food or not. That stress response can make it impossible to tell whether or not that food is actually working for you, because the stress is causing so many symptoms itself. And for me, it kind of just took like repetition, right? Like, okay, well, if I'm not sure, then I'll cut it back out again for 2 more weeks and I'll try it again. Oh, I'm not as stressed this time because I know the worst it was going to get was the same as last time. And look, I wasn't as stressed. It didn't get as bad. Maybe it was a stress response. Okay, rinse and repeat. Try it again. Oh, look, now that I'm going into this completely confidently, this food tastes great and maybe I feel better. Hang on. Maybe I actually feel even better having this food in my diet. Okay. I think those experiences, the more we kind of challenge our food fears and work on expanding our diets or work with, an allergist and immunologist on identifying the foods that are legit allergies and intolerances so that you can feel more confident reintroducing the foods and expanding the diet within the foods that aren't.
Yeah.
Being able to do that might require, bringing in some expertise or working with a therapist or a registered dietitian that specializes in doesn't mean you have an eating disorder, but that expertise can be really helpful for getting over food fears, even the food fears that are learned through embracing different fad diets. And I think that I think that stress response, like it's legit, right? It's just like, don't just placebo. Placebo is great. Placebo means like something worked, even though it's not like the mechanism. There's something between the psychology and the biology that made that sugar pill do what I thought the actual pharmaceutical pill would do. The stress response is kind of like the opposite of that. It's where you're having the symptoms of the reaction, even though you're not actually really having the reaction, but it's still the symptoms. It's still legit. It's still there. Fortunately for us, we can leverage both of those to our benefit. So we can leverage placebo effect to our benefit. I think that is a legitimate thing to do. And we can also leverage understanding how the stress response is causing these symptoms to be able to lower our stress levels when it comes to adding some foods back in that maybe we've avoided for a while.
Are there foods that you would really love to see more people embrace, like organ meats, chia seeds, like spinach?
Yeah, those are both great. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there particular foods out there that you're like, I wish you guys would try to have this at least once a month because there's a nutrient density going on there that's just so deep and good for your cells?
So I think my answer to this question, there's lots of nutrient dense foods. And I think that depending on what side of diet culture you come from, you're going to have different food fears, right? So I would say the thing I'd like to see people try is the thing that's outside of their comfort zone. I'd love to see people even just go to the Asian market and get that fruit or vegetable that's not at your normal grocery store and try it.
Yeah.
There's lots of there's even online stores that you can get the food that's feels unusual to you because you're not familiar with it. It's obviously a regular food for another culture. I think that the more we can be adventurous with foods and try new foods and embrace new food experiences, we get nutritional benefits from that as well as quality of life benefits from that. So I would be hard pressed to say there's any one food that I would say, yeah, make sure it's organ meat. Organ meats are great. They are exactly the type of food that supply so much nutrition per calorie that you get a lot of wiggle room to round out that day or week with whatever else you want. You wanted those chocolate chip cookies. That's exactly the kind of food that makes sure your overall diet is still supplying you with everything that it needs. But I think one of the problems with diet culture is we've got this list of foods that we're supposed to be terrified of. And then we also have this opposite, right? These superfoods, the powerhouse foods.
Yes.
And I think I don't want to label any food as a powerhouse foods. There's foods that I know lots of people are afraid of, seafood, for example. And seafood is safe and incredibly health promoting. It is the only animal protein that has a super clear benefit to long-term health. It reduces cardiovascular disease risk and neurodegenerative disease risk really substantially. And it can enhance cognition at any age. They've done studies in kids where they give them farmed salmon twice a week, and they have better test scores and better behavior in school. So, seafood is one of those ones where there's so many myths trying to make us afraid of seafood out there to overcome that most people have heard they've either heard mercury or microplastics or that there's no such thing as sustainable fishing. All of those things are myths. We don't need to worry about any of those things, at least in most cases. Again, there's always exceptions to everything in nutritional sciences. But I think that there's certain foods that come up again and again, like people calling iceberg crunchy water iceberg lettuce. Iceberg lettuce is very nutrient dense. If that's the lettuce you like, that's great. I would think overall, if I could say there's a food that I want to have a redemption arc, it's all of these foods that are currently the subject of a lot of fear-based marketing. Oats, spinach, like vegetables in general, legumes in general get a lot of fear-based marketing. Conventional, like non-organic foods get a lot of fear-based marketing. Fish gets a lot of fear-based marketing. I would just say like those are the foods I want us to feel comfortable with. I want us to feel comfortable adding back in the foods that we've been afraid of because somebody told us it was toxic. And so there's not like one, it's kind of like all of them.
Yeah. With my clients as a personal chef, it's usually potatoes or starchy.
Everybody loves to hate potatoes.
So any type of potato, sometimes sweet potatoes, sometimes any squash. So a winter squash, an acorn squash, a kabocha squash, a spaghetti squash. They think that that's going to kill them, or it's going to make them unhealthy, or it's going to make them gain weight. And I think all it does is create a balanced plate. So you're more satiated with whatever else you put with it, whatever the protein is, whatever all the vegetables, whatever the healthy fats. I think it's necessary for a balanced plate. But
those are also all the high potassium foods, and potassium is the hardest nutrient to get from our diets. So 97.8% of Americans don't get enough dietary potassium. And potassium, if you don't get enough, it increases risk of cardiovascular disease, especially stroke, kidney disease, and osteoporosis. Like potassium is very, very a super, super important food. And like mild potassium, like insufficiency, so like your blood levels are normal, but you're still not getting enough, can cause some like amorphous symptom, like fatigue and like muscle cramps and weakness, right? They can cause things that like you wouldn't necessarily associate with not getting enough potassium. And there's studies that show that eating potatoes, thanks to like a medium potato having 14% of the daily value of potassium, actually lowers blood pressure. Eating potato in any form other than French fries. And the reason for that is not because the French fries are bad. It's just because they have more salt, and that's the salt potassium ratio that's really important for blood pressure. So potatoes are, at least if you eat them plain, and obviously none of us are eating them plain, but like the most satiating food, like the food that fills you up the most and keeps you full the longest for the least amount of energy, if that is an important thing for you. And let's acknowledge that that doesn't need to be an important thing for everybody. So yeah, potatoes are great food. They're actually they're kind of like slightly better than middle of the road in terms of nutrient density of starchy foods. And winter squash, like sweet potatoes beat potatoes. Winter squash beats sweet potatoes. Like those are amazing foods. And for cutting out all of those great sources of potassium, potassium's tough. There are not very many foods that are considered excellent sources, which means more than 20% daily value per serving. Like the only one, like mature soybeans, most of us don't eat soy nuts. And like fresh hearts of palm, you lose some potassium in the canning. So canned hearts of palm are still good sources of potassium, but they're not like amazing. So potassium's tough. Like it's a really tough nutrient to get enough of, and it's really important. And so yeah, being afraid of potatoes is doing us a disservice.
Yeah, and you usually only hear the talk of potassium when it comes to bananas. You're told as an athlete, to always have a banana.
It only has 11% of the daily value of potassium in an extra large banana. Yeah, potatoes are a better food source than bananas for potassium.
And I know when I experimented by adding more potatoes into my diet, whether it's with my eggs in the morning with breakfast or at the end of the day, just creating a balanced plate and doing a variety of different types of potatoes, that I was so much more satiated with my plate.
Yeah.
I was fuller longer. I didn't have weird cravings. It was a huge game changer for me. So I'm a huge fan of potatoes. And as a health supportive chef, I have 50 million ways I like to prepare them and add them to salad and use them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So thank you for sharing that. I hope more people look and choose potatoes, because there's really I find it really interesting when nature really provides and it's us humans that are restricting. Like there's a reason why there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different types of potatoes that exist on this planet. More colors and varieties than we even know exist. And I don't think that's an accident.
There's a farmer who has a stand at my local farmer's market who grows these like vibrant blue potatoes. I've never seen anything like it in the store. And they taste like They taste like a potato. I don't know that they taste. I am so magnetically drawn to purple and blue foods. I don't know what it is. I don't know if my body just loves anthocyanins or if it's something psychological.
Yeah.
But if there's a purple or blue variety of something, I'm going to get that every single time.
I love that. Well, please post those potatoes on Instagram so we can all see them and be in awe of them as well. I've always wanted to find the seeds for the pink sweet potatoes.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
that's what I've always dreamed of growing because I love purple sweet potatoes. I love the lavender sweet potatoes that come
Yeah.
from Maui. They have a white skin, but they're lavender on the inside. Those are my absolute favorite. But the pink ones, I haven't gotten to try a pink sweet potato yet, but that's
I've
on
never
my
had one.
dream food list.
I've had a variety of them. I've tried growing purple and Japanese sweet potatoes, and I've had kind of like middle of the road luck. So this year I'm growing Beauregard, which is a variety of orange sweet potato. So we'll see if it's better. Definitely the plants look very healthy right now, and I could probably have my next 3 meals be mostly sweet potato greens, and the plants would still be very happy. Sweet potato greens being edible and delicious. I think that's one another. I love having a vegetable garden because you get to
Yeah.
eat things that you would never know. You definitely need to know do your research and know what parts of what plants are edible and what varieties of what plants grow in your climate. And so I'm still trying to find the perfect variety of beet that will be very happy with our summer heat here. So I'm still trying to find like my go-to of whatever type of plant I'm going to grow. So maybe Beauregard potatoes will be, or sweet potatoes will be the ones that I grow from now on. But yeah, lavender just sounds so beautiful and pink. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fun.
Well, just like we're talking about, food should be pleasurable, food should be fun, food
Yeah,
should be exciting to look at. We need to bring the joy back into the food. And
agree.
if we bring the joy back into the food, the joy back into our meals, I think that will reverberate through all of our cells and we will be more joyful.
I think the other thing that that approach does is it connects us back to how our food is grown and the people who are growing our food. I don't think I think that if you have the space, I mean, even if it's a couple of pots of fresh herbs in a window or on a balcony, I think having the space to even just grow just a little bit of something edible, it gives us an appreciation how our food is grown and how it gets to us that I think can really help in terms of the mindset of being open to new flavors, of being excited to find a pink sweet potato, right? Like there's some people who would be intimidated by that. And I think that, growing a little bit of your own or going to a farmer's market and being a regular at a farmer's market is the best thing ever. Like when people know your name and they're like,
Yeah.
I saved you the thing because I know you love it and I saw that there was only 2 left, right? That is just the most amazing experience. So
Yeah.
if you don't have the ability to grow your own, but you have a farmer's market or a farm stand that you have access to, again, it's a privilege and one that I'm deeply appreciative of. But I think that connection to how our food gets to be can be really helpful in centering our mindset on adding in more fruits and vegetables, choosing more whole foods, maybe like learning some new cooking techniques or trying some new recipes to be more comfortable in the kitchen, maybe shifting something in our lives so that we have a little bit more time to cook something that's a little bit more complex, even if it's once a week, right? On Sundays, I cook my fancy thing or whatever it is. And I think that connection can be really helpful in making some of those other changes to our routine and daily habits make those changes feel a little bit more accessible.
Well, where can our listeners keep learning from you? Can you remind them where they can find you and connect with you and ask questions and get your book?
So my website is nutrivore.com. Nutrivore is a play on words, right? A carnivore eats meat, not herbivore eats plants, but a nutrivore eats nutrients. But it is just the goal of getting all of the nutrients our bodies need from the foods we eat. So really, it is the nutritional sciences education that we can all use to adapt to our food preferences, a preferred diet if we have one, allergies and budget and time commitment and all of those things. So it is really just about understanding what nutrients do in the body, what foods have what kind of nutrients, and all of the things we've talked about today, how to balance a plate, how to combine different foods to get the full range of nutrients that our bodies need. I am at Dr. Sarah Ballantyne across social media. I'm active on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, Facebook, Pinterest, and YouTube. And if you can't remember all of that, you can go to the join menu on my website and scroll down and you'll see links to all of that. That's also where you can join my newsletter and get the Nutrivore meal map for free if you would like. And my book is also called Nutrivore because that's my favorite term. And it's available wherever books are sold. So any online bookseller, lots of local bookstores may have it. If they don't have it, you can always put in a request, and it might be at your local library. So if it's not, you can also talk to the librarian and put in a request for a book, and they can get a copy in for you.
So cool. I'm a huge library fan, so that's really neat that you have it there. Super special and helpful to people. Can you leave our listeners with maybe one last healthy tip that they can consider adding into their life?
So I think my biggest tip, I've got two. I think my biggest tip is it's okay to iterate. It's okay to take change one little tiny baby step at a time. Like the scientific studies show, like the difference between going from 0 servings of vegetables a day to 1 serving of vegetables a day in terms of our health outcomes is about the same difference as going from 1 to 5, right? So like every little bit counts. And sometimes those first steps that feel the hardest, that feel like that is the insurmountable mountain, they're the ones that actually give us the most health bang for the effort. So feel like it is okay to not be perfect. It's okay to take this one little bit at a time, and you get to make healthier eating patterns fit into your life. You don't have to rejig your entire life to fit healthier eating patterns. So tip number 1 is baby steps are preferable, because the goal is to form lifelong healthy habits, not to do the yo-yo, the hop on again, off again roller coaster thing. And then I think my other tip, just sort of thematic in what we've talked about, is to just have an open mind to information that challenges your beliefs about food. Be willing to unlearn what you have learned, because there's a lot of good information out there, but there's a lot of noise. And I hope that my resources help cut through that noise. There's a lot of other great people doing great work in our community to help really give you evidence-based, balanced, and like realistic recommendations. But there's a lot of angry chitter chatter, trying to sell you stuff. So adopt a healthy dose of skepticism when somebody is trying to make you afraid of something. Ask for citations. It's their job to prove to you that they're right. I'll work to prove to you that they're wrong too. But they should try to prove to you that they're right first before I have to spend 8 hours tracking down all the references to show that the thing that took them 30 seconds to say is wrong. And yeah, try not to. It's hard sometimes. But try to, when you see that food fear, feel free to hit all those. Every social media platform has buttons that you can press so that you don't see somebody's stuff anymore.
Yes.
And I recommend using those buttons liberally when people are trying to make you afraid of something in order to sell you something. So those are my 2 tips: baby steps and an open mind and a healthy dose of skepticism.
Well, thank you so much for your conversation today. And hopefully this sparked some interest in the listeners into looking at what's on their plate and maybe taking advantage of trying some new things.
Thank you.